iPhone standard time.
It's not on Bridges, it's just on my radars.
Nice, how long a minute it is.
Yeah, I'm getting there.
Oh, yeah. Oh, does it?
Yeah.
Let's bring our meeting to order. Tonight, our invocation will be provided by Councilman Ivory Craig.
Let us pray. Thank you, Father God, for blessing us to be here tonight. Oftentimes, it's overlooked for us to be able to come together, Father, because we know we all experienced something in life where someone didn't wake up the next day. So we appreciate you so much for allowing us to be here. And we continue to work hard for Mount Holly. Please give us wisdom to work together, Father. Bless the city of Mount Holly. Bless the candidates running for city council and mayor. And continue to bless us just to work together. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Councilwoman Polish is missing tonight. She had a death in the family and is out of town attending a funeral, so she sends her regards. Next is set the agenda. Are there any changes? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda. Motion by Ms. Shoemaker, second by Mr. Craig. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you. Next is our consent agenda. We have 4 items. Are there any questions or changes? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve. Motion by Ms. Harris, second by Mr. Moore. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Thank you. First under new business is a presentation from Better City. Is it Jason Godfrey? Yeah, okay. Thank you. Glad you're here tonight.
Yeah, glad to be here. Apologize about last time. Had a little transportation issues. We intend to give monthly reports on just where the status and where things are at. In most cases, there'll be 5 or 10 minutes, just quick updates. But programming note, when we launched this, we said that within 3 months we'd give you an action plan, which is detailed, line by line, calendared Gantt chart of what we expect to be working on. Obviously for input. So next meeting, we'll present that. We'll present the action plan for your review, give you a month to look at it, and then the following month in November, the meeting, hope to be able to have some discussion around that and see what your thoughts are and make sure we're aligned. But it's coming together really well. There's a lot of great input from the community. We've had the opportunity to talk to all of you, and done a lot of research. And obviously Brian, Danny, and Greg have been extremely helpful in pointing us in the right direction. So we feel really good about where we're at and really excited about the things that are on the action list. We kind of previewed that with Danny and Brian today and got some guidance. We're excited to present that to you next week or next month. Another programming note is we've had a little change on the staff, and so your primary contact going forward is going to be Mung Guo, who you met initially. She's exceptional. I'm really excited for y'all to have the chance to work with her, and she'll be the primary contact. So I'm not going to read this, but just the format is what we've done month to date in September and then going forward. So we've done some interviews. Parking has raised to this top of the priorities. How to look at parking downtown. So we've done one level analysis. We talked to Danny and Brian about it. Going back and do another level, so we hope to be able to present next month a little summary document that shows, all right, here's the statistics. It's very granular. Number of square feet, number of parking spots, what are public, what are private, and next steps. So working on that. Also, you can see these, but obviously the grocery store remains a high priority. We've made a lot of progress on that, understanding what the market demands, creating a brochure around what Mount Holly has to offer, and we're packaging that with some other developments we'll talk about next month. But anyway, making great progress there. I think. And the Prosperity Index, let me mention that. So we're coming up with a custom dashboard index by which we can measure progress on economic development. And so we'll be able to say, here's the key metrics, and here's where we've been over time historically, and then going forward. So it's not a matter of, oh, we think we're doing well. We can actually say, look, here's the metrics. Yep, we've made improvements here, we're challenged here, and be able to really measure that. And so we'll present that as here's what we think, and look for your feedback and say we're missing this, or we'd like to put more emphasis on that. But it's something that going forward you can really point to and say, here's the successes we're having. Any questions on those accomplishments or what we've worked on so far? All right. Moving forward, the future interviews probably won't work with Staff Attorney Ander. She's been really hard to get a hold of. Actually, we talked today, had a great talk today, enjoyed that. And really the focus will be on working through that action plan. And so these are some of the things on there. There's actually been some changes based on our conversations today, but it'll be like I say, a detailed roadmap of where to go. So that's all we have for now.
Is there any questions tonight? Jason, thank you. Appreciate you
Great.
being here. Thank you for all the hard work. Looking forward to the results and later the outcomes. That'll be good. Next on our agenda is a presentation on the Riverbend Access Area Improvements with Duke Energy, and tonight we have Jeff Lineberger.
All right, let's see. That's it. All right, good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Council. I'm Jeff Lineberger. I'm the General Manager of Water Strategy, Hydro Licensing, and Lake Services for Duke Energy. I'm not Ethan Pardue. Ethan works on my team, and he was supposed to be here, but he had an unfortunate encounter with some folks that had COVID last week, so Ethan is sick today. But I'm going to stand in and do my best to cover something very important, Riverbend Access Area. Riverbend is the largest of the public access areas that we have on Mountain Island Lake. And you may ask, okay, what got us here to talking about Riverbend? There was a process that occurred in the early 2000s where Duke Energy was relicensing the Catawba Water Hydroelectric Project. We have 11 reservoirs on the Catawba River, all in series. You see them on this map from Lake James to Lake Wateree. Each of those has at least one hydroelectric station on it. And to operate that kind of system in a modern world, you have to get a license from the federal government to do that. 10 of those lakes were built before there was any licensing requirement. But when Lake Norman came along in the 1950s, we had to get a license then. We got a license from the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission to operate those lakes in 1958, and that was a 50-year license. Well, that license was expiring in the early 2000s, and to make sure that our license proposal was consistent with what the region saw as needs relative to how we operated our lakes in terms of lake levels, the impacts on water supply, the impacts on the environment, the impacts and opportunities for public recreation, we got the community together. And we did a 3-year process here. You can see how the stakeholder teams were organized. We had 6 of them where we had about 160 folks involved. And each of those 6 teams met at least once a month for 3 years. All of those meetings were at least 5 hours long, some of them as long as 12 hours. And there were sub-teams and study teams that met in between. We studied this river basin from one end to the other. And one of the very important things that came out of this was there were some additional needs relative to public recreation, to give more people access to those lakes than just the folks that lived around them and just people that own boats. So we looked at all types of public recreational activities that really enhanced use of the lake system. We had over 300 public meetings there. Every one of those was open to the public. Other members or members of the public that weren't on stakeholder teams showed up occasionally. Lots of news media was involved there. The 15,000 meals, as you know, when you have people for a whole day, you have to feed them. And when you're feeding people and you're having that interaction that's off the agenda and the interaction in between the meetings, you really do form a sense of teamwork and ownership. I will tell you that the product out of this, I still think it was the most significant regional planning activity that has occurred in North and South Carolina in my lifetime. It was something that where we went all the way back to exactly what is the purpose of these lakes that are on this river and how can we make it better for the long term for everybody that relies on them. Okay. Now, products. The main product out of that effort was this thing called a comprehensive relicensing agreement. It's about 400 pages long. It's a legally binding contract amongst all the parties that signed it. And there were 70 parties that signed on to that contract, and you see some of those listed there, including Duke Energy, the company I work for, and the City of Mount Holly, or signatory parties there. To help focus us on Riverbend, we've got the words straight out of the relicensing agreement that are relative to the Riverbend access area. There's some measures, and I'll talk about those in just a second, that will be built on that access area. There is an opportunity for the city to lease that access area from Duke Energy for $1 a year in exchange for the city operating the facilities that are there. And really the only requirement here is that Duke Energy makes the offer to the city and the city considers the offer. You are not obligated to lease this access area from Duke Energy. And there's some construction that would go on. It would occur in this thing called the second 5-year period. Just to make that real clear, that's 2023 through 2027 is when the construction would occur, and we have it scheduled right now to start next year. If the city was to lease this site, the lease would be for the term of the new license, which expires Halloween of 2055. So it's a 40-year license that was issued in 2015. All right, what's there now? You can see the aerial image of the Riverbend access area. I'm sure you all are familiar with it. It's largely a wooded site. It has some electric transmission corridors on it. It has a boat landing on it right now. And that boat landing has 4 one-lane ramps and some courtesy docks. There are about 100 car with trailer parking spaces there on that asphalt lot. There are no single car spaces lined off on that asphalt lot. You can see back up to the north of the asphalt area a little bit. You see the entrance road coming in, and it looks like there may be a little gravel lot off to the left. That is a gravel lot. That's the overflow parking. There are obviously no lines up there, but it'll hold about 30 cars, single cars, in that existing overflow lot. So those are the only developed facilities that are on that access area right now. And it's obviously heavily used, and it's very visible. When you come over the bridge at Highway 16, the first thing you see is that beautiful lake. The second thing you see is the Riverbend access area. So it really is a gateway into the city of Mount Holly and into Gaston County for a whole lot of people. It's very accessible off of Highway 16. And there's some other recreational activities that go on there now, and there are no facilities to support it. So part of our plan going forward is to build facilities to support the demand. There's some facilities that Duke Energy will build, and that would be independent of the city leasing the site or not. We would build restrooms, a fishing pier, and with bank fishing area. You see it over there to the left on the conceptual plan. A swimming area would be constructed there, and parking for about 130 single car spaces. And the plan would be for those to be asphalt parking spaces. There's some potential opportunities if the city were to lease the access area. there is a conceptual plan for a campground there with bathhouse and additional parking and trails. Those were the things that were conceived through this 3-year process that occurred when we were preparing our relicensing application. Just to give you some examples of what some somewhat similar facilities look like that we've constructed recently. This is a aerial of our Molly Creek access area on Lake Wateree. It's a brand new access area. It's a big site. It's bigger than the Riverbend site. All of this is new, so that this was a new boat launch area. The main reason I put this on here, though, was to show you what one of our swim beaches looks like. You can see the sandy area there in the foreground, and you can also see a part of that has been buoyed off from the rest of the lake. That's kind of the boundaries of where the swimmers would be to keep them separated from the boaters. We make our swim beaches pretty shallow, 5 feet or less in depth, so that lifeguards would not be required at the site. If you were to lease Riverbend access area, lessees can charge reasonable and customary fees for people to use those access facilities. At Riverbend, the North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission actually maintains the boat landing for us right now under contract to us. So we pay them to do that. That gets the Wildlife Commission's presence there. It also gets some additional attention from their game wardens because they have an enforcement staff. So that has been a very beneficial thing. We would hope going forward, if the city were to lease the site, that we could also keep the Wildlife Commission very involved there. Because I think the more partners on the management of a site like this, the better the experience is going to be for everybody concerned. Okay. Our plans for the restroom would be a vault toilet. That's our commitment, so that is a pump and haul type facility. You see what one of those looks like on the left there at the South Point Swim Beach, which is one we just completed construction of on Lake Wiley. And you see what one of our bank fishing platforms looks like at the Springs Park down on the Fishing Creek Reservoir. We build stuff tough because it gets a lot of use and unfortunately gets some abuse from time to time. So the things we build are built to last. And we've gotten pretty good at the construction of these facilities, and this is in general what the facilities would look like that we would construct at Riverbend. This is some pictures from another one of our access areas. This is the Black Bear access area on Lake James. Recently completed a large construction project up there. McDowell County is leasing this site from Duke Energy under a access area improvement initiative lease, similar to what we're offering you guys here for Riverbend. That's a picnic shelter on the left, and just some of the camping pads that we've constructed on the right. All right, and this is the last slide, I think, that has words on it. But the intent of this was to kind of get at, okay, what's some of the benefits of a leasing type arrangement? Long-term land use. This is 68 acres of waterfront property for free to lease it to you at no land cost. Now, I know that management is not free. That would be a cost to the city. But it's a great opportunity for a beautiful piece of property to help enhance the quality of life in Mount Holly in the surrounding region. Three-way management partnership, I talked about that a little bit. I think the Wildlife Commission could be an outstanding partner. For instance, at South Point, they are going to continue to be a partner there. They're going to continue to manage the boat landing under contract to us. Gaston County is leasing the rest of the site. And so Gaston County will be operating the swim beach there. More controlled access. I know there've been a lot of issues at Riverbend. The only facilities there for boating. People were using that site for other things. We have worked with the city and worked with Chief Reagan and hired off-duty police officers in the peak recreation times on the weekends to help us with traffic there. And there are a lot of people that want to use Mountain Island Lake and want to use it through Riverbend access area. I foresee going forward, though, if we can go into a park-type situation, there would be more control, there would be a gate that people would have to come through, there would be facilities to support the demands that are there, there would be restrooms. So those kinds of things in similar situations have resulted in a much better experience for everybody once a park comes in and is managed that way. And we talked about the ability to charge user fees. The fees would need to be reasonable and customary, and the intent is to recover costs and be able to manage something that you and Duke and everybody else around there can be very proud of. And a long-term lease like this can turn Riverbend access area into something that is a memory maker for a whole lot of families for decades to come, because it's a beautiful lake. It's a beautiful piece of property. It can be managed better than it is now, particularly if we have a three-way partnership. And we look forward to working with the city to try to work through that, the city and the Wildlife Commission. And I believe that's all I have.
Does council have any questions? Mr. Meadows?
Can you go back to the slide that has the required and suggested items?
That one.
So anything in blue, which is the trail and the campground, do I understand it properly that is suggested and not going to be built by Duke and is not necessarily coming in, and that if we were to lease the property, that would be up to the city to decide whether the campground would come or go?
That is correct. And if we would work through that in the lease as we were negotiating the lease, so that it was very clear what the plan was. The property that was there, if the city and Duke entered into a lease and the city did not want to build that campground, the property that's there would still stay in the public access area boundary. And there, at some point in the future, if we have some direction from the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission about specifically we've got to develop some facilities there, the lease would address how that would occur, and it would occur in a way that both the city and Duke Energy could live with. So, but yes, you're correct. You would not, by entering into that lease, you would not be obligated to go in and build that campground right now. So.
And the federal government has not typically come in and dictated particular items per se?
That is correct. They have not done that to us. What we have tried to do by being so inclusive in the planning process that resulted in all this, we've tried to make it really clear to the FERC that this is a regional plan, and they like that. They don't want to micromanage facility plans like this. They don't want to do that.
Does anyone have any questions? Okay, Jeff?
So you mentioned public involvement, and I see the dates there predate two neighborhoods that are currently there. So we've got stakeholders that didn't even exist at the time we went through the process. Is there any way that we can have you guys potentially meet with them and answer any of their direct questions and kind of fill them in on more details and answer their questions directly about kind of where we are and timelines and that kind of stuff?
Absolutely. We would be glad to do that. Our intention here is to be a good neighbor. And we don't intend to go anywhere. Our company's been around for over 100 years. We started as a hydropower company. This is near and dear to us. So we want this to be done right and in a way that the community can be proud of, and that community includes everybody.
Ms. Shoemaker?
Yeah, so I was just wondering, what is Duke's stance on sort of preparing a site like this? So obviously, like you said, when you were planning this site, it was prior to two fairly large neighborhoods going into the area, and there've been some significant concerns about, the road that accesses both this area and also those neighborhoods, the width of it, like how sustainable it is to have the level of traffic that it has. Is that something that like Duke traditionally would participate in, like the upgrades for something like the access to this site, since it's not too far from 16?
Typically, what we have done, or what we have seen happen, is DOT will do studies to determine if new developments equal the need to to expand the roadway. I don't know of a study that they have underway for Horseshoe Bend Beach Road, but we would participate in an evaluation by DOT. It's really their call as to what is actually necessary there. I think that one thing that probably would occur here, if this was leased as a park, there would probably be less of a problem with folks parking in places they're not supposed to. Because for one, there would be additional parking inside the access area for them, and there would be more on-site management. And I think both of those would generate into less trouble with folks parking out on the road and causing traffic or safety issues out there.
Mr. Meadows?
So the plan itself, I think you had mentioned that there is some potential for slight adjustments along the way. So one of the things I'm curious about is down where you're going in, kind of looks like you got to go through the church parking lot. Is it possible to explore folding that into the main road so there's one way in and one way out?
Yes, that's a good point. We are actually looking at that now. So the detailed engineering work is going on right now. So this was a conceptual plan that was put together a while back. You'll see there are a couple of obstacles that we're trying to work around. One is how far back into the property the full pond contour comes. Right there, that little white point is the full pond contour. And we got this transmission corridor that runs through here, and there's a transmission tower right there. So we got some obstacles that we got to try to work around. The concept that we're working with right now is more of a traffic circle kind of thing, where you would come in on the main road. There would probably be a traffic circle in here somewhere, and if you wanted to go to the day use area on this side, you would come out this way. If you wanted to go to the fishing area, you'd come out this way, and then we're going to have to negotiate a way through that transmission corridor. But I think we'll be able to do that and probably not have to go this direction to have two accesses.
Yeah.
So concept that I was curious if you've had at any other facilities. Has anybody ever done a sailing school? Sailboats?
Sailing school. Not to my knowledge out of one of our access areas.
And so I was curious if you had one, if they had to do a sublease or not, if you did bring in, like, I know in Lake Norman there's a sailing school up there, but I'm not sure how they operate.
got there.
But it's a great activity. It actually teaches some engineering, and it's pretty neat concepts for kids on the water. Is one of the thoughts I had about pursuing up there.
We would be willing to discuss that with you. We'd have to look at exactly where something like that could occur on this particular site, but we would be willing to discuss it.
Yeah, just a couple things. A couple concerns, lighting. Right now, people are parking at the church. Church is making good money, which is great. But there's really no safe way to get from the church to the boat landing. And it's very dark. That whole road is well used and dark. What can Duke do to get us some light poles out there?
Yeah, that since Riverbend Steam Station is closed, it's a different world out there at nighttime. We understand that. Martha Wegner is looking into that issue right now to see what could happen out on Horseshoe Bend Beach Road to have some lighting out there that makes it a better environment at night. So, yeah, we're looking into that now, Mayor.
Great. One other thing is a concern, because it's not clearly marked. The neighbors have experienced people coming up in their backyards. You know, you have people who are single. It's frightening, you know, and there may not be mischief there, but who knows what it is. And I don't know that people really know when to stop and when to go back. Is there something that we could look at for that?
Yes, there absolutely is. Probably what we would do, I think the main place where there's an issue like that is probably here. This is the kind of the northeastern boundary of the access area. And just off the screen there is the old discharge canal from Riverbend Steam Station. And just on the other side of that is the stormwater development. So probably what we would do is try to go soft first and have some signage along this property boundary, probably going all the way up to the road. So if you were walking across here and got away from the developed facilities, you would know when, okay, you're at the edge of the access area boundary, you know. We would start probably with signage, and if that didn't work, we could come back and do different levels of fencing in there. But we'd really like to keep that as those are nice woods in there. They're a little bit grown up, but at least those are well-established trees. We want to try to keep as many of the trees as we can. So we would probably not put up a fence initially, go with signs first. But if that didn't work as well as we needed, go back with fencing.
Okay. Other questions? Ms. Shoemaker?
Yeah, so I know that the users of the lake are a little bit concerned, and I know that I know that Duke's been engaged in conversations, as well as the counties and the local municipalities around, about, you know, trash, you know, like some trespassing. You know, we've seen a really significant increase in like boating accident. I mean, so it's like the heavy usage, and it sounds like to some extent some of this development will actually help with that, like maybe focusing people in a daytime use areas instead of just the kind of just crawling over the banks until they find a place to jump in.
Right.
But I noticed that when you were discussing that, you said you felt that would be mitigated by like the increase in like management and like staff. Is that, I mean, are we talking about directly like the city as one of the managers paying for full-time staff to be in attendance there to make sure people were using it properly?
Yes, it would be part of the expectation of a lease arrangement, and obviously we would have more conversations about just what that looks like as we were developing that lease. You know, as far as what is going on relative to trash management, and this is just anecdotal information, but it's harder to manage the trash now than it was before the pandemic. For probably a multitude of reasons. One of them is our access areas are getting more use now than they were before the pandemic started. But it really feels like people are forgetting their manners, and the just throwing things down where they get finished with them. And you know, we have when we go in and close the site, we're going to have to close this site to the public at least at times during the construction. Now we're trying to work through in our construction planning, how can we keep that boat landing open at least for emergency response, but also keep it open for the public as much as we can of the construction time. But we feel like that construction period and the building of the new facilities and hopefully the lease with the city, that's a great time to reset use expectations at that site so that people that are coming there know this is a really nice facility. Somebody's gone to great lengths to make this something that we can enjoy, and the abuse will be reduced when you have a reset like that. At least that's what's occurred at other locations. So we would expect some of that to happen here, but it's going to take a focused effort. And the trash issue, we have had a couple of access areas where to get that to stop, what we've had to do is remove the trash receptacles. And the initial reaction you have is probably the same as I had when it was proposed. Do what? And that's going to make trash better. It actually has made trash better because people are less likely, if there's no receptacle there, to give you all the trash that they generated in that 6-hour trip out on the lake. They'll take more of it home with them if there is no receptacle there. But I hope we won't get to that here at this site, but it has worked some other places.
It's counterintuitive.
Yeah.
Mr. Meadows?
So you mentioned shutting down the ramp for a period of time. Do we have any idea what amount of time? I mean, with the kind of traffic that's had, both with, you know, some of the neighborhood folks, I think, use that as well. What
Yeah.
kind of expectations do we need to manage around that idea?
We don't have a fully laid out construction schedule yet, but we're talking about months that construction would be going on there. And right now, we have this thing penciled in anyway to start construction spring of next year. But again, there are a lot of moving parts right now. There are the detailed engineering is still underway. We've still got permitting to do. And we need to have some more conversation about a lease opportunity. So there are a lot of things going on. There's also a possibility of some additional bat species getting listed under the Endangered Species Act, and there may be an additional tree cutting moratorium that occurs as a result of that. So just a lot of moving parts. But it would be months long of construction, not years long, but months long of construction.
Mr. Moore?
So could you tell us a little bit about the entry fee at some of the other locations that you have and how that works?
Yeah, Duke Energy, for our access areas where we have a lessee and the lessee is going to charge an entry fee, we have to review and approve those. And in all cases, we have the lessee has proposed what those are, and we've negotiated just a little bit, but it's not been hard to come to an agreement about what reasonable and customary is. It will depend on the kinds of facilities that are offered as to what a reasonable and customary fee would be. Some locations have actual staff and a gate, and they collect the money that way. Some have Iron Rangers, where the money is on more of an honor system type basis. So there are a lot of different ways you could go about it. But the main thing would be not to have a fee that was so high that it excluded a large section of the public that wanted to use those facilities. We want people to be able to use what we build.
Now, if I'm correct, and Belmont, South Point area is charging $7?
That's my understanding.
And how many visitors were estimated at this site?
Yeah, at this site, well, there are about 600,000 recreation visits a year for the whole lake, okay, for all of Mountain Island Lake and the immediate tail race area. And Mayor, I think when you and I had talked briefly earlier, I admit, had the right number, the wrong application. It's not 600,000 recreation visits a year at this site, it's 600,000 for the whole lake. So this site probably accounts for about a fourth of that. So, and a recreation visit is one person for 1 hour. So, you know, if you had a car of 4 people and they stayed all day, well, that's a bigger number than just one recreation visit. So, but this site, whatever we construct here is going to get used. There is no doubt about it because it's so accessible, and you know, you want to be there. You want to go there and use it.
Did I answer your question, or do you have another one?
Yeah, I just wanted, you know, I think one of our biggest concerns is safety of the neighbors, the surrounding neighborhoods. We just want to make sure that whatever's done there, that it's going to be complementary to their neighbors, to the neighborhoods.
Certainly, we share that concern for safety. We want everybody that uses the access area to be safe and to be respectful. And the things that we're going to do are going to try to drive that attitude of respecting the facilities and respecting your neighbors. So, you know, there are, when you're dealing with the public, you're dealing with everybody. And, you know, some folks have a hard time with their behavior. But we intend for this to be something that is better for those neighbors than it is right now. It's going to be improved, and is something that we want them to be proud of. And when you think about it, there is no way our company would want to build additional facilities and have them be something that was a problem for all the neighbors around, because word travels fast over water, and we got to do more of these from one end of this chain to the other. We've been building them successfully so far, and we want that reputation to continue to be something that's very positive.
Mr. Meadows?
Do you have any models to follow as far as partnership goes between multiple counties? Because we're on one side and Mecklenburg's on the other. Have others been successful in working with multi-jurisdictional partnerships?
We don't really have multiple local governments coming together on one site. This would be a great site for that, though, because I know there's some interest in Mecklenburg County, certainly about what is going on over here now and what could go on over here in the future. I think that this would be a great place to test out a partnership like that.
So one of the things as a follow-up is to meet with Commissioner Elaine Powell in Mecklenburg, who leads that effort over there, to look at an effort as well as contacting Gaston County and Lincoln County. And, you know, those were members of the original Mountain Island Lake Marine Commission, who all have a vested interest in the water quality as well as use. So that's a follow-up. One area where I'm concerned as it relates to wildlife, I'm not concerned with wildlife. What I'm concerned about, it goes back to the question about entry fees and you know, wildlife has historically, and correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is don't want to charge people for boat use and fishing. If you notice, that's in the caveats up there. Currently, the South Point area and Gaston County are in discussions with wildlife about those fees. Hence, how do you differentiate what people are using it for and how many that is? Because if we were to take over management of the property, these fees are going to help offset the cost, right? So we want to make sure we have a good handle on utilization and then what we're going to generate in revenue in order to properly maintain and keep the site clean, keep it safe, you know, regulate capacity, et cetera. So those are two things that we need to follow up on, I believe, as a city, to make sure we're getting all the information we need.
So, yes, sir. I think it'd be very, very good to have the city, Duke, and the Wildlife Commission in the same room, talking through some of these important issues.
Can Martha help us schedule a meeting like that?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
We'd appreciate that. That would be great. Does council have any further questions or comments? Thank you for your time.
Certainly.
Enjoyed it. Appreciate your approach.
Absolutely. Look forward to further discussions. Thank you.
Next on our agenda is consideration of offer to purchase PID 122990 on Woodlawn Avenue. Ms. Andrews.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So you have in your agenda packet a follow-up from last meeting. You had received a letter from an attorney for an estate offering a landlocked parcel next to Woodlawn Park on Woodlawn Avenue to the city of Mount Holly for the tax value, which is $1,110. At the last meeting, there was consensus for me to bring back a bid, a draft contract. What you have in your agenda packet before you is a proposed offer to purchase and contract for vacant land for $1,110, and the due diligence period proposed is 14 days from when the contract is signed both parties. The proposed closing date is 30 days from when the contract is signed for both parties, by both parties. And so if council wishes to move forward with purchasing this property, the next step would be a motion to approve this offer and allow your city manager to sign it and forward it on to the attorney for the estate. And once accepted by the estate, the attorney indicated that there would be an upset bid period on this property so that she could follow proper disposal procedures for a property that's inside an estate. Are
Okay,
there any questions?
any questions? Does council wish to take action? Mr. Craig, does that mean you want to make the offer on the house? Okay. Second by Mr. Meadows. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion passes. Next item is closed session pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11A3 and 5. I need a motion. Motion by Mr. Craig, second by Ms. Shoemaker. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion passes. We're in closed session.